Now, I am not, what's the term? Prognosticator? What's the term? I can't see the future. Prognostics? It's, man, if only I knew the word. Um, yeah, prognosticator. Do I have that right? Maybe? It sounds like a nose doctor. Well, police go where the crime is. Now, in the midst of a historic civil rights protest, police go where the crime is. What do you think this video is going to attempt to justify? I think we're about to get 1350'd. Are you ready for it? I'm ready to get 1350'd, baby. Let's do it. Let's be nice and charitable too. We're gonna hear the arguments and we're gonna break them down, baby.
The police are my friends, a senior citizen blurted out in the middle of a police community meeting I attended in the South Bronx.
Okay.
I've heard variations on this theme dozens of times from the law-abiding residents of high-crime communities.
That's great. That doesn't mean shit, though. The fuck does that mean? The police are my friends. Law-abiding citizens from high-crime communities. That's an interesting dichotomy we're already framing right off the bat. This isn't something lefties like to talk about that often, but generally speaking, black people tend to be in favor of more and better funded police. A lot of black people live in communities where, well, they believe the police are necessary to prevent crime, or at least to respond to crime in their area. But that's not, I don't know how much that relates to the arguments we're going to be making here. Heather MacDonald. MacDonald. Here we go. She straightened her hair. American conservative political commentator, essayist, and attorney. She is a fellow of the Manhattan Institute, a contributing editor to the City Journal. She is known for her pro-police views, her opposition to criminal justice reform. Oh, that's nice. I like how being pro-police means not reforming the police. That's very good. As expressed in her book, The War on Cops, a very real thing that's definitely happening, and columns such as The Myth of the Racist Cop and The Myth of Systemic Police Racism. Really, we've busted out all the stops for this one. Describes herself as a secular conservative, advocated positions on numerous subjects, including all these, criticized welfare and philanthropic institutions, for suggesting welfare is a right. In particular, she has criticized welfare because generations have grown up fatherless and dependent. Interesting. She has written that welfare programs serve as a dysfunction enabler and that food stamp programs cause an unhealthy dependence. According to MacDonald, under American immigration policies, the United States has been importing another underclass, one with the potential to expand indefinitely. Whoa. An infinitely expanding immigrant underclass. Would you say that the great people of this nation are being replaced, perhaps? She said the coronavirus is the same as the flu. She argued Democrats and the media are at fault for racial divisions in the United States. Now, I'm not saying that she's racist, but every single belief she has overlaps exactly with the beliefs that I have seen expressed by openly racist people, which is interesting. Calls for a return to stop and frisk tactics, in spite of the fact that they don't work, and zero tolerance policing, in spite of the fact that it's incredibly expensive and doesn't work. She argues too much criticism of police brutality has made police fearful of engaging in proactive policing. What is proactive policing exactly? And that this has caused more crime. So not only do we not need to reform the police, get rid of welfare, bring back stop and frisk, bring back broken windows policing, we also need to criticize police less. That's a big issue. Too many people are being critical of the police. She's a vocal critic of BLM. While talking to conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh, she accused Obama of attacking the very foundation of civilization by giving credibility to Black Lives Matter. Nice. I like that. That's a what's that one tweet? when you're admitting that racism is so essentially American that an anti-racist protest is attacking the foundation of your civilization? What's that meme? You know, conservatives will say, "You think America is inherently racist, you piece of shit." And then you'll argue that trying to amend race relations is anti-American. So, pro-Donald Trump, obviously, anti-criminal justice reform, defended the Patriot Act. Of course, naturally. Advocated the benefits of government power be balanced out against the risk of abuse. She stated that the interrogation techniques promulgated in the War on Terror were light years from real torture and hedged around with bureaucratic safeguards. So we didn't torture enough people during the War on Terror. The war crimes we committed were insufficient. She claimed 95% of outstanding homicide warrants in Los Angeles were for undocumented immigrants, and that 75% of LA's most wanted list comprised undocumented immigrants. PolitiFact and Snopes found literally no evidence for these assertions. McDonald told PolitiFact the figures were a rough estimate given to her by an unnamed member of the LAPD. So she heard it from a person. I see. Very good. Its September 2019 congressional testimony, McDonald cited a July 2019 study on the races of police officers and civilians who were shot, which purported to show there was no racial bias in police shootings. However, the study has since been corrected, and the editors of the journal wrote that the study was unable to support any conclusions about racial bias in police shootings, so null hypothesis. One of the study's authors told CityLab he was not happy with the way McDonald characterized her study. Interesting. So it seems like, unless I'm mistaken, her entire career has been marked with failure, dishonesty, and advocacy for essentially every political position held by racist people. Interesting. Well, let's go for it.
High crime communities. These hardworking people don't loathe the police, quite the opposite. They understand what so many seem to have forgotten or never understood. Police spend most of their time in minority communities, that is mostly Black communities, because that is where innocent people are most being hurt by violent street crime.
Interesting. Why do you think that is? Do you think this video will actually attempt to explain why that is, or do you think they're just going to leave it at that?
To put it plainly, police go where the crime is.
And the crime is where the police go. An interesting flip on the correlation causation argument that you have posited here. Isn't it interesting that the areas which are racked with systemic poverty and police abuse tend to have very high levels of consistent crime?
In the 75 largest U.S. counties, about 60% of robbery and murder defendants are Black, even though Blacks comprise only 15%.
I like how we're taking the 75 largest U.S. counties so we could actually get a higher number than 1350. We actually got now 1560, which is a higher ratio. But yeah, here we go.
Percent of the population in those counties. In New York City, Blacks make up 73% of all shooting victims, though they are 23% of the city's population.
Shooting victims. That's an interesting way of putting it. The first graph that you threw out there was one describing the people who commit crimes. Now we're talking about the people who are victims of crimes. Interesting.
In Chicago in 2016, there were 4,300 shooting victims, almost all Black. Among the 24 victims under the age of 12 was a 3-year-old shot on Father's Day who is now paralyzed for life, and a 10-year-old shot on Labor Day whose pancreas and spleen were ripped apart.
I don't know what the fuck this has to do with the arguments. This feels a little bit appeal to emotion-y. Yeah, it's horrible when people die, especially kids, because they probably didn't deserve it. I imagine. I'm going to assume this kid wasn't like a drug kingpin. You know, if you watch a lot of anime, there are a lot of 10-year-olds who do stuff worthy of death. There are like 10-year-old like gang boss fucking, you know, collaborators. Yeah, Killua. How many people has Killua killed, you know? I'm just saying. But this is an anime.
This is the reality that police commanders in urban areas face every day. And every day they get calls from law-abiding citizens in high-crime neighborhoods begging for assistance.
I like how every single word is loaded with emotional appeal, just dripping with it from these rational university educators. Yes, these law-abiding citizens are begging to have the police heroically step in to save them from these disgusting criminal thugs. Like, okay, so what are we actually saying here? No shit, people in high crime areas call on the police. That's the only argument that has been made so far. We have two arguments made so far. One of them is 1350, and the other one is people call the police when they feel threatened. Thank you. Very good.
So are the police friend or foe? Are they engaging in an epidemic of deadly racist violence, as we so often hear?
Well,
In 2019, the police killed 235 blacks, most of them armed or
blacks.
dangerous, out of 1,004 police shooting victims overall. That 25% ratio
We're literally doing every argument I heard during the Stryker Allsup debate. This is these are literally just the talking points that I get from Nazis. Yeah, 25% of them were killed, but that's actually underrepresentative of their proportion for violent crime. I know this
is actually less than what the black crime rate would predict.
Yep.
Since police shootings are a function of the rate at which officers encounter violent suspects. What about the unarmed victims of fatal police shootings?
And then she's going to say that the evidence does not suggest that unarmed black individuals are shot by police at any higher proportional rate than non-black people.
As of June 1st, 2020, the Washington Post's database of fatal police shootings in 2019 showed 9 unarmed black victims and 19 unarmed white victims of fatal police shootings. By comparison, about 7,500 blacks die of criminal homicide a year. You know about George Floyd and Breonna.
Literally, I know this because I've heard all of these from there is an overlap between neo-Nazi talking points and conservative talking points. Like just a fat fucking overlap between these. It's really easy for me to address all these arguments. I'm just waiting for her to make an argument for me to directly respond to it.
Taylor. But what about Tony TIMPA? In 2016, 3 Dallas police officers held the handcuffed TIMPA, a white man, on the ground for 13 minutes with a knee to his back, while he pleaded for help. His death was ruled a homicide, caused by the officer's physical restraint and by cocaine. The point here is not to justify police misconduct.
Wait, what is that? Wait, and? Was there a gigantic media shitstorm saying that he actually deserved it and that the cocaine did it and that the homicide wasn't justified? What was his name? Hold on. Was there a huge swath of people coming out to say that his death was justified and that the homicide was unfair? What's the name?
Held the handcuffed TIMPA caused by
Tony TIMPA. Let's see. You're gonna kill me, Dallas. Police body cam footage reveals, federal judge tosses executive force suit against 5 Dallas. Pinned. Whoa. No articles here which are talking about a massive backlash. Whoa. So wait. When a white person gets killed by police brutality, even though there are drugs in their system, people generally accept the homicide charge. But when a black guy does it, there has to be a fucking city or nationwide protest to get the guy charged with homicide. And the entire Republican Party has backed up on the idea that he actually deserved to die? Interesting. I feel like this actually supports my argument, but okay, go off, I guess.
By the officer's physical restraint, but to rebut the claim that questionable tactics occur only or even disproportionately in the case of black suspects.
So there has been, we just looked at the Wikipedia article for this lady, and we saw that she has a history of lying about statistics and misappropriating police-related statistics in an effort to present a certain narrative. We know that she has even been essentially scolded by the authors of the studies that she uses for an inappropriate use of their data. Now, what the conservative lobby has done here is they have built a protracted media and data apparatus to attempt to mislead people into believing that there is absolutely nothing disproportional about the treatment that black people see at the hands of police. And in some respects, she is correct. If you look at, in a very narrow lens, certain types of data, it does seem as though police do not kill black people disproportionately if you take into account a bunch of other factors. The issue with that is that there are a number of incredibly complicated confounding variables that you need to take into account before you can actually begin to engage in this sort of research. If you want, you can take a look at this article written by Nathan Robinson. People are posting it in chat and will continue to do so after I mention this, which talks about the ways in which conservatives misappropriate data. What you can also do, if you would like to, is take a look at this handy document that I found, called the Ultimate Research Document, which has something to do with me, I'm told, which describes in exhaustive detail a number of ways in which it can be factually determined that the criminal justice system discriminates against black people. It is fairly easy to prove. Don't know why the link in chat isn't working, but here you go, kids. The easiest response to these arguments is this. Simply put, one of the biggest reasons why black people commit such a disproportionate amount of crime in this country is because they occupy extremely low-income areas that have been relegated through a wide variety of historical and socioeconomic factors to be drug runners. Most of the black murder, homicide, what have you, they come from gangs in inner cities. If you break this down county by county, you will find that there are massively disproportionate levels of black-on-black violence in specific communities, and elsewise, not nearly as much. If you take a look at the entirety of this country, break it down by race per county, and then look at relative crime rates, you will find that there is a very specific concentration of black crime in very specific areas. Why do black people have such a weird relationship with criminality and gangs? Well, I did a 1350 video where I talked about that, but the essential argument is that there was a massive demand for drugs created in this country when Nixon started the drug war, and that it was only the poorest communities with the most adversarial relationships to police that had the ability to take advantage of that illegalization of drugs to sell them within their own communities. Because it is a very good way to make money in communities where there is otherwise not very much to do and not very many ways to support your family. And of course, if you're selling drugs, you're an enemy of the police. And if you're an enemy of the police, that means you need to defend your territory, not just against them, but against other gangs. And then you have a gang war. All of this, all of these problems can be easily traceable to a collection of very bad socioeconomic policies that were pushed largely by conservative politicians, but let's not lie, Democrats certainly fucking helped along the way. And what's more, Nixon was pretty fucking clear that the drug war was imposed with racial intent. This isn't like a secret or anything like that. They were smart. They wanted to keep black people in the dirt after Jim Crow ended. They found a way. And today we're arguing against the new groups of people who are trying to justify the new Jim Crow. Another, by the way, great book you guys should probably read. I remember reading that one in college. It's quite eye-opening. And all the claims it makes are essentially true. There are incredibly narrow ways in which you can justify the police treatment of black people, but if you step back and look at the criminal justice system as a whole, it is so fucking obvious who's getting the punishment and why.
Indeed, it is premature to conclude that the killing of George Floyd was a product of racial animus at all.
How do you determine that exactly? What, does like the cop have to say the N-word while he's got his knee on the back of his neck? Like, first of all, a cop doesn't have to be acting out of active racist interest for their actions to be inspired by systemic racism. That's not like the threshold you have to meet.
As opposed to poor training and the officer's unfit temperament. Ideally, officers would take no one's life in the course of their duties.
And you oppose police reform, including the 8 points of police reform that are statistically guaranteed to reduce police shootings. Interesting. I have a feeling you don't actually care that much at all about people dying to the police.
In light of the number of arrests that officers make each year, around 10 million, and the number of deadly weapons attacks on officers 27 a day.
What the fuck are you saying, Vosh? Most retarded libs think that every single black person killed by police are killed by racist cops. Well, then it's a good thing I'm not a retarded lib, I guess? I don't know what you... No, most people don't think that. What are you going on about? Do you... Wait, this is... Hold on. We have somebody in chat here, very low IQ. This is something that I notice a lot. Rather than actually address the underlying arguments about the existence of systemic racism, you just argue that the other side is incorrect in their assessment of the existence of systemic racism. It's a very lazy way of avoiding having to make your own arguments. You know, you never actually have to justify, attack, or defend anything, really. You can just vaguely gesture at your opposition and say, well, your criticisms may be valid, but let's be real, all the BLM rioters think every cop is a racist piece of shit. And since that's pretty much non-falsifiable, I can't really argue for or against that, but it's pretty stupid to try to use that as a counter-argument.
It is not clear that 1,000 civilian deaths, the vast majority occurring in the face of potentially deadly attack, show a law enforcement profession that is out of control.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that police deaths in this country are massively disproportionate to other countries per capita, like other countries of a comparable economic state, also, just noting, there are bad things cops can do that aren't murdering people. I've seen data suggesting that non-lethal violence is employed very frequently against black people, disproportionately. Like, they get roughed up more. I've seen evidence, I mean, we've all seen evidence, that stop and frisk is massively disproportionately employed against people of color. Oh, wait, hold on one second. Wait, hold on. Remember Tony TIMPA earlier? That white guy who ended up having the knee on the back of his neck? Those charges were dismissed. This double proves my argument. So her original argument was like, dude, bro, look, this just happens from time to time. Look, and then you cite an example of something you describe as homicide, and then the charges get dismissed? This is an argument in favor of police reform. Her initial argument was, see, look, dude, this just happens, but it wasn't racism. But now it's, see, look, dude, this just happens and it wasn't racism. Plus, it's evidence of the cop not being brought to justice. Why would you not find another better example to support your case? I've said this for a long time, dude. BLM is not black people versus white people. BLM is anti-racism, and it's anti-police brutality. And police brutality affects white people as well, especially poor white people. Poor white people get fucking wrecked by the cops all the time. This absolutely happens. This isn't exclusively an issue black people face. Poor white people are often treated fucking terribly by the police. Police hate poor people. This is not something that we have to, this doesn't have to be a race thing. Now, BLM is justified in framing itself the way that it is because black people still get the way worse end of the stick, but it doesn't have to be like a race war thing. It's not white versus black. There are black cops and they're the problem too. I have never in my life, not once, seen a BLM advocate say, oh yeah, we just need more black cops. I have never seen that happen. Not once.
Can police methods be improved? Of course they can.
From the person who opposes literally every form of police reform and wants to bring back types of policing that massively increase police brutality but don't bring about any good benefits.
With more hands-on tactical training,
that's police reform.
More practice in de-escalation,
that's police reform.
And better techniques to control stress.
That's police. You're lying right now.
What won't help is defunding police agencies.
You're lying right now. You oppose police reform. You want to bring back worse police behavior.
Officers in depleted departments who cannot get backup when they face dangerous suspects will be even more stressed out and more at risk.
God, listen to the fucking snowflakery here. They'll be more stressed out. Dude, can you imagine them ever talking about any other group of people? What about poor people who are constantly stressed out because they have to work 3 jobs, and then they go online and they go to YouTube and watch this bitch who wants to get rid of welfare and food stamps talk about how actually the police haven't gone far enough? What about their stress level? I bet you if poor folk and black folk were less stressed, they'd probably be more likely to react well around the police. We don't give a fuck about those people, right? Just the stress level of the police, you know, who have a on-the-job death rate, which is 1/2 that of police pizza delivery drivers. I'm not saying being a cop doesn't have its rough moments. It certainly does. But like, holy shit, somebody who is so indifferent and so callous to the suffering of other people to then suddenly talk about how we need to make sure the cops aren't stressed out. It's so fucking disingenuous.
Risk of making bad decisions. Response times will increase. Cash-starved agencies will train less, not more.
Okay. Well, what if we made fewer things crime and a lot of the money that we currently divert to police departments instead goes towards other facilities that respond to other types of problems? Hey, guys, remember when just a couple of days ago... wait, Vosh, to be fair, she might have mentioned their stress because stress leads to shooting. First of all, if your individual stress level is being used as a justifying factor for a professional agent of the state to murder citizens, that's not a good defense. Second of all, that goes double for citizens who aren't professionally trained in conflict resolution. That argument goes to me. Guys, remember just a couple of days ago when that autistic kid was like freaking out at his house and the mom called the police and the police were like, yeah, we're coming in. We'll help you, ma'am. Remember that? They were under a lot of stress when they went in there. Remember that? I think maybe a social worker could have done that a little better. Some cops, maybe a little bit more de-escalation effort being put in there.
If the goal is to reduce crime, shifting police funding to social services is also a mistake.
Wait. Fucking factually wrong, sociology major. Every dollar that goes from police departments towards other social welfare programs is absolutely decreases crime. Factually incorrect. This is not true.
For decades, New York City was spending 1/7 of all government welfare dollars in America. Yet crime started falling in the city only when the NYPD adopted the data-driven policing that has now become the norm across the country.
And no, for one, it got abandoned. I don't know what you mean by data-driven policing, but if we're talking about stuff like broken windows policing and stop and frisk, it has not been found that these are effective in reducing crime in the cities. There were a bunch of explanations for why crime dropped, and they are not police officers arresting more people. I can tell you that for fucking sure. Yeah, these are the arguments that Stryker and Alsop were making, by the way. Second of all, what the fuck does New York City spending 1/7 of all welfare money in the country have to do with the argument that you're making? New York City is the largest country on the planet. Or not on the planet. I think it's the 3rd largest on the planet. Largest in the country, if only. Yeah. Sorry. Just my America brain for a second there. I forgot that that America doesn't stretch around the entire world, and that the Maine and Alaska are touching tips, you know, near the Arctic. It does, though. If only. Long Island should be its own country. The United Countries of America, if only. Yeah, maybe I'm voting for Biden because I'm sympathetic to all of his gaffes, because I misspeak like 18 times per segment. Anyway, what are we talking about?
Sending officers to the areas where they are most needed.
What does that mean?
That norm is now threatened.
Wait, what the fuck does... yes, we implemented data-driven policing where we sent cops to where crimes are happening. Yeah? What laws? What statutes? What reforms? What actually happened?
Sure, there are bad cops of all races who must be removed. That is true.
But we will defend them to our dying breath.
Of every profession and always will be.
Except teachers' unions don't defend their teachers if they fucking murder someone or like rape a kid or something. We're only talking about murder too. How many guys have you seen headlined like cop rapes woman during traffic stop or some of that shit? All these people get defended. None of these people get dropped like a hot iron. These people get defended by their unions, and the worst they get is they get fired from their department and transferred over to another department. A lot of these counties and states, they have they allow you to just wipe your record. You know, if you ended up getting fired from the force because of 18 police brutality incidents, you can have that shit wiped. Just go to another county, start all over again.
But so is this. The overwhelming majority of officers are motivated by a desire to help the most vulnerable among us. Police are not
this isn't an argument.
The problem. Racism is not the problem. Crime is the problem.
What causes crime? Why is crime higher in those areas? Well, they would argue that it's welfare, of course.
The law-abiding citizens of high-crime communities, the ones who will pay the price of a diminished police presence, get it. If you believe that all Black lives matter, you should too. I'm Heather McDonald, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Prager University.
Nice meme. Yeah, that was basically just 1350. Anyway, the biggest, they never explain why Black people do more crimes because there are only two answers to that. There are only two, okay? It's genetics or environment. If it's environment, it's our fault that it's fucked up. Because if it's their fault that it's fucked up, it's genetics. And if it's our fault that it's fucked up, then we have to fix it. It's that simple. The most easily falsifiable claim they made there is the idea that money being diverted towards social programs is in any way, shape, or form ineffective at fighting crime. I like how they said that, and then they talked about welfare. Like, they didn't bring out a study where they talked about how investment into X programs didn't beget a change in crime. They just talked like nebulously about welfare spending with no controlling variables, no other context that can be provided, you know. Bosh, New York is the 42nd largest city in the world? I don't think that's true. Hold on. Largest cities on Earth. There's no way there are 41 cities. Well, okay. Most populous, not literally largest. Oh, wait. It's, 10th largest at 18.6 million. And then we have Cairo in Egypt. Cairo is that big? Holy shit. Then Osaka, Japan, Mexico City in Mexico, Beijing in China, Sao Paulo in Brazil, Bombay in India, Shanghai, China, Delhi, India, Tokyo, Japan. Huh, interesting. I think I've seen these in a different order before. Is this just counting like county numbers? I don't know. Every time I debate somebody on this, I try to make them make the genetic argument if they deny all environmental arguments, and I win every time because they never can. You taught me well. Yeah. Again, it's very, very simple. There are two suggestions for why Black people commit more crime. It's environment and it's genetics. If somebody says it's genetics, you can make that argument. But at that point, they've taken the mask off, and they usually tend to lose a lot of credibility in most spaces of public discourse. And what they'll generally do is they'll deny every single environmental factor, you know? They'll say it's because of culture. Why is their culture worse? And they usually divert off of that. What if somebody tries to argue culture? Why is their culture worse? Why? Anyway, I would love to see whatever study that she was citing to indicate that money put into social programs doesn't help crime. Let's see. The people that need to hear this either won't care or won't listen. On average, over 60 people are shot in Chicago every weekend with police presence. Imagine what a war zone would be without the police to slow them down. That's an interesting... This reminds me of the Biden's presidency argument. Dude, a fuck ton of people are dying where the police are. Imagine if the police weren't there. That's an interesting one right there, you know? Like, it's like dude, COVID-19 is terrible. Biden's America. Imagine how bad it'd be if it wasn't for Trump helping us out. Like, okay. You should just show the title of the video to an SJW. They'll take you to court for hate speech. Nice meme. Who benefits the most from defunding the police? Criminals, that's who. Well, you have less criminals. So actually the answer to this is yes. Because being a criminal is probably pretty stressful. So if you invest in social forces that make fewer criminals, then yeah, it is to their benefit. Yeah, for sure. Notice how almost everyone who hates the police always asks for police protection when they hold a rally. Ah, the iPhones argument. We got this one too. Very high IQ, 1,000 likes. Very big, you know. Yeah, you notice how all these Republicans in Democrat-run cities still ask for city benefits? Dude, whoa. Oh, wow. You're a Republican in New York City and you're still benefiting from food stamps? This sounds like you got a problem with that. Yeah, it's a non-argument. See. Breakdown. No fathers, no discipline. No discipline, no respect for... Okay, whatever. This is... Hatred leads to anger. Anger leads to fear. Bullshit. Why are there no fathers? By the way, I actually read a really interesting article recently about how this whole, like, black no father shit is actually hugely overinflated. Like, massively so. Hold on. My dad claims that their culture is worse because black fathers leave their children more and unmarried births are more prevalent in black households. Why? Why do black fathers leave their households more? But I read an article. I don't think I have it out at the moment, but it was an article about how the reason why this whole like black people leave their families things took off isn't because black men leave their families as much. It's because black families marry less. So the actual rate of two-parent household staying together, raising their children, is not that different between the races, whereas the rate of unmarried single mothers, so single mother in the sense that she's not married, is much higher for black people because they're way more likely to be unmarried. Why? Marriage is expensive, dude. If there were no crime, we would not need the police. True! This is the study she used to try to claim social programs aren't effective. I found it on the sources section of the video on their website. It's really funny because the article literally says the economic improvement in the 90s was a big part of the decrease in crime in New York City. Might be good to look into it. Nice. The National Bureau of Economic Research. During the 1990s, crime rates in New York City dropped dramatically, even more than the United States as a whole. Let's see if we can... Skeptics believe it was the economic boom of the 1990s, a carrot that encourages people to remain on the straight and the narrow, that brought about the drop in crime rates in New York City and the nation. Whoa! When people are doing well economically, that means they're less likely to engage in crime, which most people only engage in as a last-ditch effort to provide for their families? That's fucking crazy, bro. That's amazing. And so it would naturally follow, then, that if we invested in these impoverished black communities, so there were fewer poor people there, then there would be less crime because they would have other options, right? Now, the secret belief of Republicans when they're making these arguments is that black people are stupid, like subhuman, and that if you just gave them money or gave them better access to economic opportunities, they would just waste it away gambling or whatever. That's a centuries old talking point that black people are poor with money. They just gamble it away. They're not very frugal or fiscally responsible. And it's held deeply in the beliefs of many of these people that there's not actually a point in improving the economic situation because they're just prone to crime. It's like the Cuphead Dice Guy controversy. Well, the Cuphead Dice Guy controversy was them evoking tropes from old cartoons that had black people in it, but I don't know how direct of a parallel that is. Anyway, let's wrap up with these comments, huh? The movement isn't about facts, it's about Marxist usage of black resentment. Love me some Heather McDonald, always speaks the truth, all based in hard statistics. A video laden with emotional appeal with no cited statistics whatsoever, not even in the video. That's what I'm looking for. Mayor stopping police from doing their jobs. Here we go. George Floyd killed himself with a massive overdose of fentanyl. There we go, guys. See, we got over here. She didn't say it, but she knows the people in the comments will be like, Heather McDonald, I liked your video, but there was one factual error. You see, George Floyd wasn't killed by the police. He was killed by COVID-19 and fentanyl, which he had enough in his body of to kill an elephant, you see. In fact, medical sources actually say that it was not that he was choked to death. He just, in his drug-induced stupor, obstinately refused to breathe after being placed on the ground. The cop begged him to begin breathing, but his last words were "Black Lives Matter," and he choked on his last on his last word because he did not want to breathe. So it was actually his fault. Derek tried as hard as he could doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but it was not enough to bring back George Floyd, who died of the fentanyl I don't know. Finish this bit in your own minds. "2020, and we have to tell grow-up people that cop equals good and thief and rioters equals bad. Dude, it's 2020, and we have to tell people shit you tell 6-year-olds. It's fucking tiny brain children with grubby fingers that are too stupid to understand any nuance whatsoever. Dude, I don't get it. The Democrats aren't acting as though all their fucking morals are based off of a child's view of the world. It's ridiculous. Way. Oh yeah, here we go. Debunking the most pervasive myth about black fatherhood. This is what I was looking at. Thank you very much. Who? Novalsky. Thank you. There's a very pervasive myth about black fathers that they're more often than not absent from their child's life. But if you look at the data, it turns out the truth is far more complicated than the ugly stereotype suggests. So, CDC data showed that 71.5% of black non-Hispanic children in 2013 were born to unmarried women, compared to about 30% of white non-Hispanic children, 70% to 30%. But as Josh Levs pointed out in his new book, 2.5 of the 4.2 million black fathers, or about 60%, live with their children. Lev's numbers suggest that it's not true, as the CDC figures suggest, that 71.5% of black dads are absent from their home, rather that they're just unmarried. Still, the same CDC data shows black men are nearly 3 times as likely as white men to have at least one child they don't live with. But Blow pointed to policy-driven issues that may be driving that disparity. For example, a previous report by Justin Wolfers, David Leonhardt, and Kevin Quealy from the New York Times found there are 100 black women not in jail or prison for every 83 non-incarcerated black men. So mass incarceration has actually drained 1.5 million black men. That is fucking insane to think about. 1.5 million. Many of whom are young and of marrying age, from their communities, making it more difficult for black women to find committed partners of the same race. All the data paints a more nuanced view of black fatherhood than the stereotypes suggest. It's not an issue of laziness, inability to commit to families, or other inherent flaws of black culture, as some people might suggest. Who are they linking in the some people? Fox News, Bill O'Reilly. There we go. That makes sense. There are systemic issues at play. Most black fathers do seem to be making the future bright for their kids. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, just a little bit there. A little bit.